And once again, I'd love to welcome everyone to the Los Angeles Birders webinar for tonight. We are very, very pleased and honored to have Jon Feenstra with us. Let me just move through. Sorry about that. Here we are. Jon, I'm sure everyone in Southern California, or actually California, and a lot of North America is familiar with Jon. Jon is something of a legend here in Southern California, perhaps. This started back in 2007, Jon, when the Big Day team of Sack recorded an impressive 224 species in a mere 24 hours. Jon was an integral part of that team. Not only is Jon an outstanding birder, he's the pioneer of many Southern California birding field trips, including North Slope of the San Gabriel Mountains, several of Los Angeles's urban parks, and who can forget the trips to wastewater treatment plants, complete with cold beer and lime, courtesy of Jon. Thank you, Jon. Field trips with Jon are always educational and entertaining, as many of us will find out on the 21st, this Sunday. Jon was raised in New Jersey, and you might have noticed a bit of Jersey accent still with him. Despite a strong interest and talent for birds and birding at a young age, Jon pursued an academic career and earned his PhD in physical chemistry from Caltech, though it wasn't long before Jon declared that he was for the birds, and that became his full-time passion. Excuse me. Today, Jon lives in the Pasadena area where with his young family. I didn't write this, Jon, but they are young. Jon has started his own company, Woodstar Biological, where he does biological consulting projects, including wildlife surveying and research. Jon also co-authored checklist to the pelagic birds of Southern California. He's also a senior tour leader with Wings Birding Tours, and he's also the newly elected vice president of the California Birds Record Committee. That's a lot. So whether it's on the ocean, mountains, traversing deserts, navigating the jungles of Ecuador, or birding the crushing urban LA landscape, Jon birds it all, and he is your man. Los Angeles birders are very pleased to have Jon as a valuable member of our board and helping to guide our organization into the future. And we'd like to welcome him back as our speaker for tonight, where Jon will steer us swiftly through some bird ID. And you like that? I kind of made that.
Yeah. No.
It's good.
Okay. And with that, let me stop this share. And I'd like to now welcome Jon Feenstra.
Hello, everybody. All right, let me start my share.
And click on the sound thing.
Yeah, there it is. And here. And there. Okay. And
perfect.
Everybody see this, hopefully. Yes.
Mm-hmm. Yes.
It looks great.
Right. Yeah, thank you. It's good to be back here and in front of the webcam again. I'm going to bumble through this presentation. As you can see from the title screen, I'm sort of expecting this to be bewildering, and hopefully I don't lose everybody by the end. As was alluded to at the top of the show, we will not be talking about Taylor Swift tonight. So I saw that there were, like in the 40s or something of people who are signed up. I expect that number to drop because there's whoever signed up for a Swift identification was surely searching for Taylor Swift. Good night to all of you. We're going to move on to the topic at hand, which is looking at fast flying, hard to identify little birds in the sky. So to get going on that, I'm going to start the next few slides. I'm going to do some quiz birds, which like I guess they aren't actually quizzes because we didn't go over anything yet. They're just going to be things for you all to chime in on, just so I can show my own bad photos of things and see what you all think. I'm going to move on, just talk a little bit about the taxonomy and biology of swifts and, where and how to watch them. And then I'll move on to do species accounts of our regular occurring species, and then some the rarities and vagrants. On the right there, the list of swifts that have been recorded in California, and I'll throw in a few bonus swifts at the end, just for fun. So let's move on. So this is Ron. I'll need you to start the poll on this one. This is Quizbird number 1.
And the polls are on your right. Go ahead and check what you think it is or what you believe it is.
And I'm going to come back to these, not now, but later in the presentation as I'm doing the species accounts. So we'll talk about each of these individually.
Okay. Well, I think people are getting the hang of it now, John. Now we're starting to get lots and lots of answers. And if you haven't chosen an answer yet, please do so in the next few seconds. 4, 3, 2, and 1. And that's it for that poll. Okay, John.
All right, here comes Quizbird number 2. Except it didn't go. All right, there you go.
Ah, there you go. Okay, let me get up to, and there we go. Here's the poll for Quizbird number 2. Please go ahead and answer swiftly. How many times are we going to use that really lame joke?
Trying not to. As you all know, birding is serious. There is no humor in this.
Well, if there is, there shouldn't be.
That's right.
Okay. 5, 4, get your answers in. 3, 2, and come on. I know there's one more. 1. Okay, we're out. We're out of here.
All right.
Okay. Next.
Let's do number 3.
And here we are for 3. Oh, okay. Yeah, there's something. Oh, no, that's your cursor. Never mind. Yeah, I was going to say there's something on this slide. Okay.
What sector the swift is going for.
Yeah, exactly. Okay, 5, 4, 3, 2, and 1, and that ends this poll.
Okay, this one's a sound one, so I'm gonna hopefully this sound comes across.
Okay. Sounding pretty good. Let us know in the chat if you cannot hear things. There's not much we can do about it, but go ahead and answer. Let's get a few more answers in 5, 4, 3, 2, and 1. Okay, John.
All right, here. This is another sound one, but there's two parts to this recording. So I'm gonna play the first part. And the second part. Okay.
While answers come again, could you play the first and second part again?
Of course.
And the second. Okay. We'll close it in 5, 4, 3, 2, and 1. Cool. Okay. And this is our last one.
This is the last one.
Yes.
Swift on a stick.
Swift on a stick. Oh boy.
Swift-sicle.
Swiftsicle. Are you sure it is a swift? Kind of looks like a fish. And we're getting some answers in. I think it's a bit difficult for some.
Yeah, well, I tried to make this as confusing as possible. So at the end of the presentation, you'll just not even bother with these birds anymore.
It's like I'm going to stick to rock pigeons from now on. And we're going to close this off in 5, 4, 3, 2, and 1. Thank you all very much.
Okay. Let's see.
Okay, we're all set.
All right. So swifts are members of the order Apodiformes. They share that order with their closest relative, which is the hummingbirds. And among the features, they're genetically the most similar. They also have a short, strong humerus bone, which is the bone between the body, the inner wing bone. Which doesn't seem like too much of a surprise in a pair of families here that are all about flying. It's the an integral part to their lives. Also kind of interesting is as for birds that are pretty small, they spend a long time developing before they leave the nest. Neither hummingbirds nor swifts are birds that can, say, hop around on the ground and beg for food from their parents. They pretty much have to get right to it as soon as they leave the nest. But swifts and hummingbirds are actually pretty different, and every other aspect about them is very different. And swifts are a member of the Apodidae. The Apodiformes, Apodidae. This is a Greek root for footless. And if all you did was watch swifts and no other birds, it would be you could understand that or imagine that they don't have feet at all, because it's just not something you ever see on a swift. This is an alpine swift. Can't remember where I photographed it, but it's a Eurasian species that winters in sub-Saharan Africa. And I remember reading a paper recently that about alpine swifts specifically, that once they leave their breeding grounds, they don't land again until they return to their breeding grounds. So swifts spend almost their entire lives in the air. They do have little feet that they use to cling to, usually almost occasionally like near vertical surfaces and crevices or things like that. They're not perching birds. Whereas like a hummingbird, you can even see the feet and that wire-crested thorntail down there. So they use their feet a lot more, but also for nothing, not much. But anyway, so watching swifts, they are aerial birds. They, as I said, they don't really spend very much time at all being on land, and when they are on land, they're not in any place that you really ever see them. They're in a crevice or a chimney or a inaccessible rock ledge or behind a waterfall high in the mountains or something like that. So looking for swifts, you're looking up, and there's probably in most places in the world, there's probably not too much airspace that hasn't been crossed by a swift at some point. Places where that get good thermals are often places to look for swifts. I have this picture of a white-collared swift with a black-chested buzzard eagle soaring. The thermals that lift birds of prey up and allow them to soar around also bring insects off the ground and out of the forest canopy to higher altitudes, which is where swifts are flying around to eat them. So just looking up while you're outside. You never know when a cool swift is going to fly over. So they also swifts share a lot in common with swallows. Swallows are not swifts. They are passerines, so an entirely different order than the swifts. But they share a lot in common. They're another aerial insectivore. So swallows and swifts are sometimes feeding in the same places, either way up in the air or over a body of water or something, some place where insects congregate. Around here, any of the local reservoirs that get congregations of swallows often have swifts, usually white-throated swifts or Vaux swifts flying around in them. Or the Paiute Ponds is a really good place for swifts and swallows at the the right time of year when it's warm and there's lots of bugs. The previous photo was two birds actually together. I spliced this cliff swallow in with this Nyanza swift from East Africa. So these birds do not occur together, but swifts and swallows themselves often do. This is also a good thing to look at, just because the structure of these birds is different, and they, as I said, they're in different orders, but both are aerial insectivores, and swifts are very powerful flyers. You don't see them land. They're very long-winged and slim-bodied. And you can see with comparison to this cliff swallow here, a proportionately bulkier bird with broader, shorter wings. Now there are swallows that are more swift-like a bank swallow is kind of, it's a more slim bird that flies, in a way, more similar way to a swift than many of the other swallows around here. But in general, they're pretty different looking birds, even though they often occur together. There is a webinar from LA Birders on the identification of swallows that Adam Searcy did a couple years ago. So if you're not watching this live, you could pause this right now and go watch it, and then come back and finish this about swifts. So I will move on. These are the swifts. I just nicked this from eBird, the bar charts for the swifts of California. So we have 3 regularly occurring swifts: black swift, Vaux swift, and white-throated swift, and then 3 vagrant swifts, chimney swift, and then white-collared swift and common swift, which each only have a single record for the state. Our swifts, our regular swifts, black, Vauxes, and white-throated, all come from 3 different genera. So the Cypseloides, Chatura, and Aeronautes, and each of those have their own ways of, there's members of each of those species that are somewhat difficult to tell from each other, but since we only have one of each of them around here, the features of the genera are useful in separating those 3 from each other. Once I get into the Chimney Vaux's swift mess, you'll see all of that. But separating black from Vaux's from white-throated is fairly straightforward for things that are moving quickly and often uncooperative. So let's get on with it. Let's talk about black swifts. I'll just thank Mark Sheelan in advance for giving me a lot of photos of things, so you can tell if the photos are really good, they're not mine. And if they are, if they're not, if they're not good, if they're my photos, and if they are good, they're probably Mark's, or I got them from the Macaulay Library. So black swift is a regular breeding bird around here. They're generally uncommon, pretty local to the nesting areas and wet rocky areas near waterfalls. I don't think they're there anymore, but they used to have a few used to nest at, say, Sturtevant Falls and Santa Anita Canyon. There are undoubtedly some other places in the San Gabriels where they do nest. Around here, we see them in migration. Bear Divide's a pretty good place to see them in the spring, sometimes Paiute Ponds. There's some summering birds, presumably breeding somewhere in the San Gabriels, that you can see above Claremont. So they're around, but usually you have to either be really lucky to bump into them or go to some place where they can be some pretty reliable, but generally a scarce bird. This is our largest swift, locally regular swift, and entirely black, though they do sometimes have a paler face, and the juveniles can get kind of a scaly look. And I'll talk about this. Is hard to do in a presentation with photos, but flight style is a really important thing to use when identifying swifts. And I feel like I'm talking about seabirds when I say stuff like this. It's the stiff wing beats or powerful flight or things like that. And they do share a lot in common with the seabird identification, following jizz or gestalt to identify these things that are often way up in the sky and backlit and moving quickly. Black swift is a cypseloides swift. They usually have squarish tails. The tail generally projects further behind, quite a bit behind the wings, and further behind the wings than, say, the head projects out the front. So they look like they can be kind of tail heavy. Black swift has a pretty, especially relative to white-throated and Vaux, a fairly powerful flight with a fair amount of gliding. Something you don't see in the smaller swifts, but otherwise is generally a large dark swift. And so here are a few photos that Mark Shields sent me. I could see that the photos, and Mark could probably confirm this, the top two and the one there on the left, these sort of have like a brownish cast to them. So I assume these were taken around sunset, probably above Claremont. There's a scaly juvenile there at the top right. And then a dorsal view of one there on the bottom right, but you can see a little notch in the tail, but a fairly square-tailed large swift, monochromatic, basically a big sooty gray to black swift. And again, we don't see a whole lot of them, but they are here. They're findable, and it is also the identity of Quizbird number 1. So, Ron, if you had the stats on this, see who got this one.
I do. 1 second, and
naturally, this is my photo, so you can tell because it's basically a smudge.
And here are. Can you see that?
No.
Nope. Share results.
No, cannot see the.
Okay, there we go.
There we go.
All right. Okay, good. People are doing all right here. Yeah, I thought about doing something evil, like putting in a storm petrel or a shearwater, a Jaeger or something silhouette. I decided against it. I figured you're all good people who came here for not to be brutalized. So, but yes, this is a black swift. If even though it is not a great photo and it's against a bright sky, it's not showing any color to it at all. It's not showing a pale rump or a pale throat or anything like that. It's just a monochromatic dark swift, long tail projection, a little bit of notch in the tail, but not it's not square, or nor is it forked or very pointed or anything. So
Great. And I'm not sure if this. I'm sorry. I'm not sure if this slide shows up to our YouTube channel either. Just let those people know that 54% of everyone who answered Black Swift, and then everyone else was kind of spread out among Chimney, Vauxes, and some other Swift.
Cool. All right. Well, great job, everybody. Even my bad photo is identifiable. So. All right. Let's see. So we'll move on to quite possibly our most distinctive swift, white-throated swift. This is an Aeronautes. Aeronautes genus is characterized sort of smallish. They're very fast, very quick wing beats and quick flight. I think all of the Aeronautes swifts are all pied like this. I'm only familiar with white. The other one I see a lot is white tip swift in South America, which is also a black and white thing like this, but very distinctly marked. If you get a good look at this in light where you can see the colors, no ID problems. It's got a forked tail. It often holds it close like this, so it looks like it's pointed. Long, thin, banana-shaped wings, slim body. A lot of aerobatics, so they're really fun to watch, doing all sorts of cool tricks in the air. They're year round here in the LA lowlands. They are good. It's a good bird to watch while you're sitting in traffic. They love a good freeway overpass. There's some local movements. We get migrants out in the Antelope Valley. Say it took me a long time to see a white-throated swift at, say, the Paiute Ponds, but they come through in the spring, in April and May. So there's some migration of them. The plumage pattern is really distinctive with the white throat and breast and sides the upper tail coverts. There's also little white tips to the secondaries. Can't see in this photo, but it's there. So here's a few different angles of them as they fly around. You can see the forked tail on this one. You can see the white tips to the secondaries here in this in Mark's photo to the right. And I put a classic white-throated swift habitat shot here. This is under the 605 freeway. This is exactly the sort of places they like. In fact, they do. There's white-throated swifts roosting in this little crevice here in the freeway overpass, and they also are very noisy. So unlike our other swifts, which we don't really hear very often, we hear white-throated swifts a lot, and they often are making noise from these crevices. So sometimes if you're, say, walking down the street and walking under a bridge or something, you can hear the white-throated swifts making noise inside the bridge somewhere. So let me just play that sound. Actually, you know what? I'm going to go to the next one because it's the answer to quiz bird number 4. I'll play that sound right now. Oh yeah, okay. Good work, people. So 83% of respondents identified this correctly as white-throated swift, and just a few people put black chimney or Vauxes. So yeah, excellent work. Yeah, very distinctive sound and often heard. I included some other sounds later in the presentation to separate chimney and Vauxes, but you don't hear them a whole lot, but you do hear a lot of white-throated swifts. And oftentimes that's the key to look up, as you hear the white-throated swifts, and there they are flying around up there. That's how I get them in my yard sometimes. So let me move on. So our last regular swift is Vaux's swift. This is a Chatura swift. So the Chatura swifts, they show the little feather shaft tips sticking out of the tail feathers. So they got the little spines there. They have bulging inner primaries, so you can see that in this both of those features in this picture here, and that's the Chatura swifts have that. Some of them show that more than others, but it's a characteristic of the genus. They're also often, I always remember growing up in New Jersey, the chimney swifts are like, oh, those are the cigars with wings. They have a slim body with the head projection and the tail projection being pretty similar. So this photo doesn't show a great angle for that, but they look, sort of symmetric in the amount of them that sticks out from the front and the back. Anyway, this is, and then Vaux's swift is a local, they I guess locally winter, maybe sometimes. They used to be some pretty spectacular roosts of them around downtown LA when there were old buildings there, but a lot of those have been knocked down, urban renewal and such. So the great masses of Vaux's swifts aren't where they used to be, but they breed locally in Northern California, in northwestern North America, migrate through here spring and fall, pretty much anywhere. You can find them anywhere swifts and swallows are, or pretty much any place. They migrate to Central America. So, and as plumage wise, they generally show some more contrast. So this picture illustrates a bird with a paler underparts contrasting with darker underwings, and on the rump is the same. The rump is paler than the rest of the upper parts of the bird. So I've got a few different angles here from myself and from Mark showing some of these field marks. You can see a generally paler, a swift paler on the underparts, and the photo in the top right shows a paler rump relative to feathers on the back. You can see also the other features of the Chatura genus in these, the little tail spines. Some of these sort of show the bulging inner primaries. Depending on the angle, you get a bird that's really does look like a flying cigar, like that one on the bottom left there. So let's see. And quiz bird number 2 is a Vaux's swift. How would we do, Ron? Okay. So yeah, 58% of respondents got this Vaux's swift, and a few people said Chimney, and then the few people who said Chimney / Vaux's swift and Swift Spa, they're also right, because it's all of those things. There's 3 correct answers to this quiz. Yeah, and this bird, you can identify it from as a Chatura swift. You can see the little spine sticking out the end of the tail. It's a square-tailed swift, and the paler underparts contrasting with the say the underwing make this a Vaux's swift. And I photographed this around here someplace. So now we move on to the brutal part of this presentation, the real the real slog here. So chimney swift is a vagrant to California, and it used to be a more frequently encountered bird. Again, the old buildings, particularly around downtown Los Angeles, had roosting swifts. So if the vagrant chimney swift were ended up out here in the spring or summer or fall, it had a place to hang out. And if you went to a place like the LA River, where there's water and bugs and things like that, birds that are roosting downtown or flying around over the LA River used to, in ages past, be more regularly encountered. With a lot of those things in a lot of those buildings in downtown places having been removed, and new stuff built there that has fewer cracks and open shafts and stuff. Chimney swifts probably still come by, and I mean, we know they do in small numbers, but they don't have cool places to roost. So if they're flying by, they just keep flying by. You just got to be lucky to find one somewhere. They're also declining in the east with other insectivores, so the number of them that reach California is fewer than it used to be, and probably only I don't know, maybe 3 a year in the whole state. So not maybe annual in the local area, but it's just a bird that is flying by, and you got to be quick to get on it. So relative to Vaux's swift, which is the identification problem, and they occur here spring through fall. So probably easiest to find or easiest to identify maybe midsummer, when Vaux's swifts aren't around at all, but they could definitely occur here at the same time Vaux's swifts do. So that makes for really interesting and potentially impossible identification challenges. So here we go. Chimney swift, you can see the one in this picture. It looks a lot like a Vaux's swift. Relative to a Vaux's swift, it's bigger. It has maybe more like paddle-shaped wings, stiffer wing beats. It flies a little bit differently, maybe a little more gliding, just because it is a slightly bigger bird. And the size does add some noticeable differences to the way that it moves. That would be helpful if you're looking at chimney swifts and Vaux's swifts together. Like other Chaturas, it shows the little spines on the tail, bulges on the inner primaries, and that sort of cigar-shaped body with sticking out the back and the front to a similar degree. It's darker than chimney swift. The underparts contrast less with the underparts of the body contrast less with the underwing, and the same goes for the rump. It also has a diagnostic voice, which if you're on the East Coast and there's chimney swifts, you kind of hear all the time if you're in an urban area. I haven't heard one in California, but presumably they could be vocalizing here, and if you get one that's vocalizing, you can tell the difference. So here are a couple of chimney swift pictures, thanks to Mark, from above and below. Again, looking at a darker bird, with less contrast between the body and the underwings, and again on the rump, less contrast between the rump and the rest of the upper parts of the bird. So. And if you're looking at this and saying like, I don't see what you're talking about, John, you're right. This is really not easy. And documenting a chimney swift in California requires a lot of good looks, prolonged looks that you might not get because it's a swift, and good photos at different angles and all of that stuff. So these are good photos of chimney swifts, and I'll get to some bad photos like mine. This is a Quizbird number 3 is a chimney swift. And I suppose this could be something weird like a Chapman swift, because I photographed this in mid-November in Ecuador, but it was way up in the Andes where migrant chimney swifts occur. So, right. I left this one. Everybody, let's see, 35% said it was a chimney swift. 19% said it was a Vaux's, and the rest of everybody said either chimney / Vaux's or swift spa. So that's great. So what makes this a chimney swift? Well, first of all, what makes it a chimney / Vaux's swift? You can see this photo illustrates well the bulged inner primaries. That's pretty typical of Chatura swifts. You can see, I guess, some little bumps on the square tail that are the shaft spines sticking out the back. So I get you to Chatura. This was a hard one. So this one is but if you were, most people got it. It's a dark bodied Chatura swift, with showing not a whole lot of contrast between that dark color and the underwings. Again, not a great photo, but if you had a gun to your head, or you were taking an arbitrary quiz on during a birding webinar, you can come up with a chimney swift. So this is the eBird range map grab. So you can see where the core of the range is, where it drops off, and then a number of records in California and on the west, and a lot of mostly coastal, I guess, like many of our vagrants, but also detected in the deserts as well. So that's chimney swift. So the voices of these guys are different as well. So you can see from the spectrogram here, chimney swift, a lot of sharp little staccato sounds. Vaux's swift showing a lot more like almost little trills and slurs and stuff. So let me play both of these things. And okay, that's chimney swift, and then here's Vaux's swift. All right, play it again because that's just back it up. All right, there it is. Let me play this one again just because it was short. You can hear these little like mini trills in it. And so that was the identity of Quizbird number 5. And I put the 2 recordings in here because sometimes it isn't always the easiest. And the first recording of Vaux's swift that I played has some of those little slurry notes in it, but also it's somewhat staccato, clicky, like a chimney swift. And oops. But the second one here, actually, there we go. But the second recording has those little trills in it. So 43% of respondents said this was a Vaux's swift, and then a handful of others said black or chimney or white-throated or something else. So mostly everybody who responded was on the right track. So very good. Yeah, again, the especially you can see it from the spectrograms. If you can get a recording of these things, that is a fine way to identify them, or to confirm identity rather. Although, like I said, other than white-throated swift, which I hear regularly, and Vaux's swifts when they were roosting downtown Los Angeles were deafening in their roar of trills and twitters, but it's not a thing you hear a whole lot of when the birds are just kind of flying around a pond somewhere. So what I showed before were decent pictures of chimney swifts to kind of give the idea of what they look like in their most classic sense. I went through the Macaulay library to try to find chimney swifts and Vaux's swifts in similar poses, so it would both highlight the differences between them, but also just show how tricky the identification is. This is a chimney swift on the left and a Vaux's swift on the right, and so the things that I pointed out earlier about a darker bodied bird, the chimney swift, with this one and many of them do show a contrasting paler throat, and that pale throat makes the rest of the underparts, the body, look even darker. So that contrast can be helpful as well. Whereas in the Vaux's swift on the right is paler below, and it shows less of a contrast between the paler throat and the paler body. So that can be helpful. Again, depending on the angle and the light and what have you. But that is something that is helpful in identification. So these two are pretty good photos. Again, here illustrating the contrast of the rump versus the rest of the upper parts. Chimney swift on the left and Vaux's swift on the right. A pretty monochromatic dark bird in the form of chimney swift, and on the Vaux's swift, a paler rumped bird contrasting with dark on the rest of the upper parts. These are pictures that Ryan Terrell took of chimney swifts and a Vaux's swift at the Paiute Ponds 2 springs ago. So it's 2 different chimney swifts, the 2 left birds. And I just spliced in one of the Vaux's swifts. So this was a Vaux's swift taken at the same time and the same place in the same position as a chimney swift that was also present. So the bird on the left, a different individual than the chimney swift on the right, showing a dark rump and pretty fairly monochromatic across the upper parts. And the chimney swift on the right, showing a contrasting pale throat, dark body beneath, and compared with the Vaux's swift that I just adjusted and spliced into the photo, so you could see the. There's a police car going on the side. All right. Okay.
John, could you identify the chimney versus Vaux's again?
Yes. Let's see. There's my cursor here. So this bird on the far right is a Vaux's swift, and these 2 birds are chimney swifts. And this one just a dorsal view and a ventral view. So the 2 on the right, I spliced this Vaux's into the picture of the chimney swift, so you can see the difference between this basically a darker bodied bird and a lighter bodied bird. Now, in the when the chimney swifts were discovered there, Ryan Terrell, who was birding with Matt Brady, also observed the differences in their flight style and size, and the things that don't come across in a presentation with photos. But with the photos, you can also you have good supporting evidence to see the plumage differences in these 2. So yeah, a lighter Vaux's swift versus a darker chimney swift. So that's one from right here at home. So this is the bird I took. I was photographing Vaux's swifts in the Antelope Valley a few years ago, and took pictures of this one. And it's probably a Vaux's swift. I didn't think it was anything different at the time, but I was just photographing swifts as they flew by me, and got pretty good pictures of this one. But it's a bird that, looking back at the photos, like, I probably could have taken a closer look at that, and maybe I was looking at a chimney swift and I just didn't realize it. it's just showing the difficulty of identifying these things, because I'm looking at something that could be a darker bodied bird with a darker, less contrasting rump. But I'm not sure, and a lot of these are going to get away. So to make it to go the extra mile on this, comparing these things, I went and looked at some dead ones that can't get away, and I could put them right next to each other, and at the LA Museum, and see what these things look like side by side in as many different postures and positions as I could manage. So this is there's a Vaux's swift on the top and a chimney swift on the bottom. It's pretty tricky. So this is I looked at this and it's like, oh, okay, well this doesn't help me at all. This is shows two birds that are very similar looking. I see maybe a slightly more contrasting white throat showing off the darker underparts of the chimney swift, but it is anything but a straightforward ID. I mean, the chimney swift is slightly larger, but not a lot larger. I mean, of course, these are birds and folded up, not flying around, so there's only so much we can do with it. But still, it helps to compare the plumage. Chimney swifts on the left and Vaux's swifts on the right. And see contrasting paler rumps on average of the Vaux's swifts, and slightly smaller. But even the chimney swifts, at least in the bright light coming through the window, also show some contrast in the rump with respect to the rest of the upper parts. So it's it just makes it nice and confusing. The underparts, Vaux's swifts on the left and chimney swifts on the right. Again, on average, you're looking at darker birds on the right. However, there's a couple of those birds in there, these two chimney swifts right here, that look paler than the other chimney swifts. I didn't write down what said on the tags to see if it's maybe like they're fresher or something like that, but anyway, it's whatever. They still are say could be deceptively pale in comparison with the other chimney swifts. So again, it makes the identification even more difficult. So I took a chimney swift on the left and a Vaux's swift on the right, and these are both spring birds. So adults or second years, and tilted them around different angles to try to see if I could come up with anything. I could really make them look the same if I put them in the right light conditions. Chimney swift a little bigger, especially you can see that maybe that center photo looks like a larger, bulkier bird. But on the right, I could in the bright light, I could really make those the rump of the chimney swift really look very pale. Same with the underparts of chimney swift on the left-hand bird. Or I could make both of them look very dark rumped by angling them into the sun and putting their upper parts in the shadows. So just making the not ID even more plausible. So we'll see how people did on this one. This is a chimney swift on a stick. Quiz bird number 6.
Yep, give me a second. I lost it. Shoot.
That's okay. That's it.
Where are they? Oh, there we are. And quiz bird number 6. And here you go.
Oh, okay, good. Yeah, people were, people were conservative here. Most people did think it was a chimney swift. 26 of the respondents that nailed it to species. 26%. 17% thought it was a Vaux's swift. 9% gave it a chimney Vaux's spa, and 39% gave a swift spa. And a couple people said it was not a swift. I think that was Ron. You confused people by saying it was a fish. So, it is not a fish.
It does look like it.
But yes,
Well,
that's a great a great conservative outcome, and I always advocate for slashes and spuzz when possible. In fact, this whole speaking series of identification started as slashes and spuzz to kind of bring home the our abilities or lack thereof in order in identifying birds, and that it's never a bad idea to leave it at your limit of confidence. And if if this were like a wild mushroom out in the forest, and you had the same degree of confidence in its identity as you did the identity of this swift, you probably wouldn't just pop it in your mouth. So, and that's always that's always a good lesson. So let's move on to something else, because I think we've beat up Chimney versus Vaux' swift enough. White-collared swift. There is a single record of white-collared swift for California from late May, and there's a few other U.S. records also from late May. I'm pretty sure this is the only bird on the California state list that does not have a substantiating evidence in the form of a photo or recording or a specimen. I think this is the only bird on the state list that's just a site record. And not a surprise. Everybody who's seen swifts out there know that, if it flies by and you either don't have a camera or you're not ready, it just keeps going. However, white-collared swift is a pretty distinctive bird. It's a different genus than the other ones we've talked about. It's a streptoprocne. It's a big swift. I'd say if you've never seen a white-collared swift before, you might think something like a kestrel or something. It's huge. At least for a swift. It's a widespread tropical swift. There are a number of different subspecies in mountainous areas, from Mexico across South America. They're strong flyers, and they fly long distances between breeding areas and foraging areas. So I see these birds breed up in the cliffs in the high Andes, but I see them way out over the lowland Amazon. So they flew out there just to eat a bunch of aerial wasps or something, and then fly back to the cliffs. So they certainly are capable of serious movement. They're like I said, a big black swift, a little bit of a forked tail, and a prominent white collar. And the ones that are shown in this picture, you can see the white collar pretty easily. But I just took a couple other pictures of white-collared swifts where the white collar is a little less easy to see. So the one on the right, these are against bright sky. You can see the white collar pretty easily. The one on the left, not so much. But again, it's an enormous swift. It does it's a very powerful flight, a lot of gliding. A little bit of a notched tail. I suppose if you saw that bird on the left way up high, could think say a black swift. But if you watched it long enough, the white collar would become visible. And the flight style is quite a bit different from black or any of the other Cypseloides. So just to show how big it actually is, here's a white-collared swift specimen next to black swift, white-throated swift, and Vaux' swift. So truly a monster here. And again, as I said, I think this is the only record of a California bird that doesn't have a photo. So now everybody out there, all armed with cameras, get out there and photograph that white-collared swift. Some late spring from now, so we can have clean that one up. So there's a single record of common swift for California as well. And this was, actually, should have grabbed the photo of that. Oscar Johnson found it and photographed it out in Riverside County near Desert Center in October a few years ago. There are a few other North American records. They're mostly spring records, and there's some Eastern North America. I think there's a couple of Aleutian records as well. But a spectacular record for California. There are no records of common swift nearby Southern California. A real a heck of a find, and very very lucky. Oscar knew what he was looking at, and got a great photo, or an identifiable photo, and it's on the list. It's a widespread species across Europe and Asia, winters in Africa, so it's a long distance migrant, totally capable of crossing up at the Bering Strait, or flying over some ocean, and coming down coming down the Pacific coast of north of the wrong continent. Common swift's a big swift. It's a black swift in size, but has a long forked tail and a contrasting pale throat, which you can kind of see in this one. But I grabbed a couple of other photos off the Macaulay Library to show a common swift looks like. You can see that forked tail. We don't have a swift that looks like this in California. So if you did see a swift that looked like this, you'd at least know you were looking at something very different in a very fancy vagrant. But otherwise, a fairly monochromatic brown bird. I don't know. I don't know enough about how they fly to comment on flight style. I've seen common swift, but it's been a long time and I can't remember. But a big swift, but the shape is pretty distinctive. Here's common swift next to black swift and our other swifts. Common swift is the one with the white throat at the top of on the left, or on the left side of the right there. So about black swift size. That long forked tail, even if you didn't see the contrasting white throat, if you saw that long forked tail, you would know you're not looking at a black swift. So I threw in a couple of other bonus swifts in here. These are, I put this one in. This is not a bird that has been recorded in California yet, but it is a possibility. There are a handful of records for Alaska. It is a long distance migrant, breeds in Northeast Asia, and has, some of the populations of them breed in Northeast Asia and migrate to Southeast Asia and Melanesia and Australia. There are, late spring through fall records in Alaska. So, not inconceivable that it could come down the wrong side of the Pacific Ocean and pass through California. It's another. I didn't make a fuss about this in the for common swift, but it's another different genus. So this is an apis swift, like common swift is. And similar in size, a little bit bigger than common swift. But what really makes it stand out is that white rump. So like common swift, it has a long forked tail, but unlike common swift, is mostly mostly dark below, though very scaly, and then has this very distinctive white rump. So here's a couple of pictures of Pacific swift from China. So you can see it's really scaly looking. That's probably a detail that you couldn't really see it in that previous picture. This previous picture is from Gamble, by the way. So this is an Alaskan record. This one was photographed in China. So, but you can see a scaly looking swift, but with a very distinctive white rump, and does not have that contrasting white throat like common swift does. So another one that would be it's out there. It's on the on the radar for a potential vagrant to California. Less of a potential vagrant to California, but hey, you never know. Is white-throated needletail. Again, a different genus, a Hirundipus, which I didn't go too much into this, but the genus of barn swallow is Hirundo, and the genus of common swift is Apis. So it's some combination of swallow swift. This is a great big swift, and a very distinctly marked one. A long distance migrant. There's a population that breeds in Northeast Asia. And migrates south to Australia. So there are records for Western Alaska, a few in the late spring. If you saw this, you'd definitely know you're looking at something crazy, because it's a very distinctly marked. It's a very big swift, not as big as white-collared, but bigger than any of the other ones. It's almost as big as a white-collared swift. So really, big chunky looking thing. Distinct white throat and white undertail up along the outer flanks there. From above, there's two extra photos here. From above, it's really glossy looking. So I don't know if this photo was doctored at all, but it is a very shiny looking Swift. So yeah, if it in that distinct white kind of saddle or spot on its back. So if you saw it, it'd be you'd know you had something really cool. So and with everybody out with a camera, it is our duty to find one of these in the state of California. And with that, thank you and Swift on. I hope this was not as confusing as it was for say it out loud.
Actually, that was fantastic.
Yes.
Thank you very, very much. I quickly wanted to tell everyone, if you have any questions for Jon, pop them into the Q&A down at the bottom menu bar. You have a Q&A section that helps us keep track of everything. A couple of interesting things came up in the chat.
Yeah.
Hope had raised the question about Chimney Swifts. I believe it was Chatura pelagica.
Mm-hmm.
And
pelagic, yes.
Oh, that's a
Right.
good. Let's see.
And Marcus pointed out that the pelagic portion, or he went to Wikipedia, and Wikipedia pointed out that it probably refers to a nomadic lifestyle rather than something dealing with the oceans. Even though I was wondering if maybe the first one was found on a boat or something when that slide came up.
Maybe. Yeah, they're known to be long distance migrants. So yeah, they completely disappear from North America in the winter. Yeah, I don't know the origin of the type specimen, but yeah, they and the name Chimney Swift, they do indeed nest in old buildings and things. They presumably back in the day nested in big hollow trees, but there are no big hollow trees in the east anymore. I think that's a bird kind of like purple martins in the east that are now completely dependent on the structures of humanity for nest sites, which is kind of interesting. And they're named after a building, or a part of a building.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. The ones that came into downtown LA were the buildings were sold, renovated, and their chimneys were actually graded over. So we lost that.
Yeah, so no more.
That was
Anyways,
pretty spectacular. Back in the day, the thousands or maybe even tens of thousands of Vaux Swifts that would descend on downtown LA were pretty amazing. It was one of those bird experiences, kind of like parrot roosts, where people walking down the sidewalk would stop and actually like look up and be confused and amazed and maybe even a little scared at all the swifts flying around. It was pretty cool.
Yeah, absolutely.
Do swifts hybridize? I was just like reading. There's a bunch of Q&A. I just saw. I was
a bunch of Q&A, so we should do the Q&As. Yeah, please put your questions in the Q&A.
Yeah, I'll just take this one right here. John Rutherford writes, at the museum where the Chimney versus Vaux Swifts confirmed via DNA analysis. I don't think so. A lot of the specimens are very old, and unless somebody studied them, unlikely. They do have. And do they hybridize? And I don't know. A lot of these birds have pretty different nesting preferences. Chimney and Vauxes, have similar, but they also breed very far apart from each other. But yeah, I honestly don't know. Probably the Birds of North America account would be the best place to get that, and I didn't read that for this, unfortunately. So all right, let me take this over to the Q&A. Were one of you guys going to read the questions, or you want me to do it?
Sure, I was going to go and
go for it.
The people on the YouTube don't see that. So Scott asks, do Vaux Swifts tend to fly at lower altitude than white-throated Swifts?
I think maybe on average. I often, if I see all of the Swifts flying around at the same time, like over a body of water, that seems to be the case, but I wouldn't say that that's a any kind of hard and fast rule. It's they're looking for food and they're going to go wherever the food is. Same, and they could be with swallows. A lot of times I'll see swifts that are above the swallow flock, but they could definitely all be flying around together at the same place.
Mm-hmm. Great. Alexander asked, you teach us mortals how to even photograph one. Camera never focuses on them.
Well, you've seen my photos. They're like the one in the background right now. That's pretty good for Swift photos. You need a fast shutter speed and a camera that can focus really quickly.
Yep.
A decent digital SLR with a long lens is gonna be a necessity. You're not gonna be able to do it with any kind of point and shoot style camera. That's as good as I could say. And I also will say I don't photograph so many swifts around here, but I do photograph a lot of swifts in Ecuador, and I take hundreds of photos before I get one that I can say is identifiable to the thing that I thought it was when I photographed it.
Yeah, take a lot of photos, and another thing is, if your lens has a focus limiter switch, use it. Some lenses have a thing where it will only, it will limit the autofocus to greater than 10 meters or something like that, and that's useful because it makes your lens autofocus faster, because you need it for swifts.
Yep. Yeah.
Okay, so there's Lily.
Next.
Asks, do swifts ever flock with swallows?
Yes, they do. They don't always, but again, they're swallows and swifts are both aerial insectivores. They often are feeding in the same place at the same time, especially during migration. Like Vaux swifts, I see with swallows a lot because they're migrating at the same time that swallows are migrating. And if you go to a place, a body of water where there's a lot of bugs flying around, you're going to see swifts and swallows together. Sometimes they're by themselves, but yeah, sometimes they're together.
Mm-hmm.
Cool.
Great. Richard asks, can you show using your cursor the large area and the secondaries you mentioned a few times?
Yeah. All right. Let me go back because I didn't realize that wasn't clear, but I can. Oops. Let's see. Oh yeah. I'll just pull up this one right here. Yeah. So this is Quizbird Chimney Swift. And it's not the bulge in the secondaries, it's the bulge in the inner primaries. So in here, and it's a feature of these Chatura swifts. So yeah, Chimney and Vaux swifts both show that. I should have been more prepared and shown a picture of like a short-tailed swift from South America, which it's extremely pronounced. But that's what I'm talking about when I say there's this bulge here. And if I go to, or I don't know, let's like find a different one here. All right, we got this. So something like I guess a Nyanza swift in Africa has a little bit of that too. But let me find one that's a little better. So I guess it somewhat occurs in something like a black swift, but it's much more pronounced in the Chatura swifts. So again, a lot of these things are, looking at, you have to look at a lot of birds to be able to see this, and these are averages, but it is something that the Chatura swifts show more significantly than the other swifts do.
Okay.
Cool.
Cool. Alessandro asks, which of the two Vaux versus Chimney tend to have the bulging secondaries, or is that not a good marker for separating the two?
Yeah, they both have that. But they're both Chatura swifts, and they both have that. Let me go forward to one of these ones where I got the Chimney swifts and the Vaux swifts right next to each other. Yeah, like here. So here's Chimney Swift and Vaux Swift next to each other. Actually, in both of these photos, or in this photo of the Vaux Swift, the bulge on these inner primaries is showing, and whereas in the Chimney Swift it isn't. But it's not really a feature for identification. It's just the way that the bird is holding its wings. This Vaux Swift, is holding its wings out a little more set, and the Chimney Swift has its wings back a little bit more. So they're just in slightly different postures, but if they were in the same posture, they pretty much look the same.
Okay.
Oh, molt question.
Great, a molt, yes. Yvonne asks,
I did have...
only one Swift in the presentation showed signs of molt. Could you share the molt strategy of the common Swifts of California, for instance?
I guess the short answer is no. The Chimney and Vaux Swifts, the Chaturas, I believe they both molt on the summering grounds before they migrate. Black Swift, I believe, molts on its wintering grounds. I hope I don't have that backwards. But the molt strategy, this is sort of an interesting bird here because this is a spring bird. So this one looks like its molt got interrupted somewhere, and it's missing an inner primary, or one's growing in here. So this one's kind of a different looking bird. But right, the swifts that we see, I guess I didn't have enough pictures of white-throated swifts, which we see all year round. But the swifts that we see here are generally not in molt because they're migrating. So whether even if they, whether I have it backwards and they're molting on their summer grounds or wintering grounds, we aren't really seeing those birds that are molting. They've already done it or haven't done it yet, and they're going to do it someplace else. So we don't see molting birds.
Mm-hmm. Great. Let's see. Lisa asks, are there any swifts nesting in chimneys in LA anymore?
Probably not. Vaux's swifts don't nest around here. I guess maybe I don't know. I don't have enough of the historical perspective to know if chimney swifts ever were suspected of breeding in LA. I know they did summer here, so I guess it's possible that they did, at least on occasion when there used to be more of them. But yeah, the chimneys are gone. So we just don't have the numbers of roosting birds like we used to. So not only are they not nesting, we don't have them just sticking around because those places aren't here anymore.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Another question from Yvonne: are the spiny shaft tips of chimney swift preened to look like that, like montmots do?
Yeah, that'd be cool. I don't think so. Yeah. Actually, preening in swifts would be kind of an interesting thing because you do see things like white-throated swifts. They're very aerobatic and they do lots of neat things. You watch them mate in the air, and they fight in the air, and they preen in the air as well. I don't really see that in other swifts, so I wonder if things like chimney swifts and Vaux's swifts are preening when they're in their in their roost sites, hanging on the inside of some like brick shaft or something. But as far as I know, they're not making those spines. And there are others like the needle tails, and there's also spine tail swifts. And I mean, if they're adding to that spininess, that's I suppose that's possible. But they're not making that.
Wonderful. Another question from Yvonne: are male and female swifts the same size?
Sort of. There's overlapping sizes. The females are on average smaller, but not by much. It's not like as pronounced as it is with, say, raptors, where you can actually sex the birds by seeing them near each other. It's in the realm of millimeters. So presumably in hand measurements can sex them, but that's about it.
Mm-hmm. What about the max flight speed of any of the swifts?
Oh, good question. I don't know. I don't know the answer to that. They're fast, hence the name.
Hence the name. And they're not called sloths. Another question from Yvonne. I like this one. What predates successfully on swifts?
Well, swifts aren't fast enough. And I have seen them getting I've seen them predated by falcons, by peregrine falcons. Yeah, I've seen peregrines take swifts. So presumably other falcons elsewhere in the world do as well. But yeah, not too much.
Okay, yeah, hard to catch. Alexander has a question. Around what part of the evening do swifts shift into purwills and nighthawks in the evening? I guess, when do swifts leave and purwills and nighthawks come out? I guess that's the question. At what point is it safer to call a fast flying bird in the air as a nightjar rather than a swift?
That's a good question. I'm afraid I don't know the answer. I know, a lot of my swift experience is from Ecuador, and I know that the swifts that feed over the lowlands but nest up in the highlands will come and go to their breeding sites in the dark. So you'll see a bird that breeds in the Andes way out over the Amazon lowlands, say, basically at dawn or near dawn. So it had to fly through a lot of darkness to get to where it was. Around here, in places where I say the Paiute Ponds, for example, where there are both swifts flying around and lots of lesser nighthawks flying around. At dawn and dusk, it wouldn't be so surprising to see both. But usually, if I'm looking at, in a place like that where there's a lot of nighthawks, the swifts there are migratory, so they're flying from some roost site, which might be, say, in palm trees in in Palmdale or Lancaster, and they're flying out over the desert after it gets light out, and then finding places to roost in the evening. So it probably depends very much on where you're actually standing, whether you're seeing nighthawks and or nightjars and swifts at the same time or different times.
Yeah. And in reference to the lack of chimneys in the LA area now, Pete points out that Vaux swifts nest in chimneys of houses up in the San Francisco Bay Area. Cool.
Yeah, cool. Oops.
Yeah. Not seeing anything in the Q&A. Ted had pointed out in the chat a link to a photo of a short-tailed swift that shows that bulge in the inner primaries. If he wants to click on that.
Yeah, that's pretty cool. Like, that's probably the one that has that feature the most obvious. But again, it all depends on angle.
Excellent. Well, Jon, this talk generated tons of chat and questions, and only because those little buggers are really moving, we can't get a good look at them. So we need all the help we can get in identifying swifts. So thank you very, very much for a wonderful webinar.
Yep, thank you. It was fantastic.
You're welcome.
And you may actually have some chimney swifts out on the pelagic trip. After all, they are pelagic.
They're pelagic, yeah.
No, maybe not.
Maybe not.
Thank you, everyone, for joining us. In 2 weeks, we'll be taking a look at wintering sparrows, specifically bells versus sagebrush. So please join us for that one. If you're a member, you will receive an email notice and be able to sign up and all that. And until then, thank you very much for joining us, and we'll see you next time. Take care, everyone.
Yep.
Good
Thank
night.
you, Jon.
Thanks, Jon.
Good night, everybody.
Good night, everyone.
Good night.